Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Tiger Computing's first ever live webinar. My name's Sean Paul, and I'm the Business Development Manager here at Tiger Computing, and I'm joined today by our MD and founder, Keith Edmonds. Here at Tiger Computing, we design, build, and support Linux systems for businesses all over the world, and have done so for well over 20 years. We work exclusively with Linux. We have a short presentation for you where we will cover the 5 key principles you need to follow to keep your Linux servers secure and available. And later on, I'll tell you about a special offer that can help you with this as well. Let me hand you over to Keith.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Let's get started with those 5 key principles. So the first principle is to make sure that you're running a fully supported Linux distribution. And by fully supported, I mean one where the full security updates are still being released. But there are a couple of gotchas here, and the first of those is that word fully. Now, there's a common misunderstanding that with so-called long-term support of LTS Linux releases, many people believe that they have 5 years, sometimes longer, of full support, but that's often not the case. So with Ubuntu, for example, they offer 5 years of standard security maintenance for all the packages in their main repository. But the standard LTS release doesn't include support for any of the packages in the universe repository. So if you're relying on an LTS release to give you full support, it'd be worth checking with your Linux distribution that everything you need to run is actually covered by that LTS support. Second gotcha is that from time to time, entire Linux distributions become unsupported. That's pretty rare, but it's actually happening to CentOS right now. Back in December 2020, it was announced that CentOS support would be ending altogether. CentOS version 8 support ended in December 2021, and CentOS version 7, that has limited support until the middle of 2024, and after that it will be unsupported. Now, of course, there are ways forward without CentOS, but if you're currently running CentOS and relying on it, you should start planning for some changes that you need to make before July 2024. Now, the second principle is to have a robust monitoring infrastructure in place. Let me give you some examples. A very simple example is monitoring disk space usage. It's clearly disruptive to your business to run out of storage space, so it's important to identify a disk that is becoming full in sufficient time to do something about it. So here you can see a graph showing how full various disks were on a system, and it's immediately obvious that there's a potential problem around September, October time. Now, we knew about this because once the disk became 80% full, our monitoring system alerted our support staff. And you can see from the graph that having been alerted at the 80% point, we had about 2 months to fix a potential issue. And of course, as long as you know about it, 2 months is plenty of time. And you can see that some corrective action was taken in mid-October. Another example of why monitoring is so important is related to disk failures. Now, RAID is a widely used technique which, amongst other things, it makes it possible to mitigate against disk hardware failure. If a disk in a RAID system fails, the system just carries on working. It's not apparent that there's any failure at all. But of course, somebody has to know that the disk has failed so it can be replaced. So this screenshot is taken from our monitoring system. Don't worry about the detail. The key points are the red line on the left and the word critical. What's happened here is that the monitoring system has detected a failed disk in the RAID subsystem. And remember, at this point, the system is functioning normally, but this alert enabled us to schedule a disk replacement before any further hardware failure resulted in data loss. Later on, I'll give you some guidelines about how to implement an effective and robust monitoring regime. The third principle is to have some kind of configuration management system in place. A configuration management system, or CMS, don't confuse that with a content management system, that provides a central point to manage multiple systems from. And if you keep the CMS configuration in a repository such as Git, then you have the start of an audit trail. So some of the more popular CMSs include Ansible, Salt, and Puppet, but the principles of each are similar. You define on the CMS server the configurations you want for each of your servers, and then the CMS makes that happen. And if you have multiple servers that are fulfilling a similar role, such as web servers, then you only define that role once, and when you make any change to that role, all the web servers will be updated. CMSs are pretty powerful. They can manage just about every aspect of a server, things like installing or removing software packages, managing users, they can edit configuration files, they can change application settings, and so on. So our first three principles were to run a supported Linux distribution, to have a robust monitoring infrastructure, and to have a configuration management system. Our fourth principle is to ensure that security updates are installed in a timely manner. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean running the latest version of every package, but it does mean running the latest patch for the version that you're using. This is another screenshot from our monitoring system, and this time you can see that the OpenVPN package needs updating on this server. Now, you may think it would be easier just to simply set systems to automatically update, but there's a couple of problems with that approach as well. The first is that changes will be happening to your system software without anyone's knowledge, and I feel slightly uncomfortable about having systems update themselves without me knowing about it. The second is there's no guarantee that the updates are actually happening. Now, here at Tiger Computing, we don't set our systems to use automatic updates, but we do review all the new security patches every day. And our monitoring system not only checks for any outdated packages on the servers, but it also checks that the checking process itself is working. Here you can see a couple of examples of where our monitoring system has picked up some failures. At the top, the script that checks for outstanding updates has failed. And in the bottom part of the screenshot, you can see the updates check have been running for too long. So if you are using automated updates, do make sure they are actually happening. Our fifth principle is to focus on the services that your Linux systems are providing rather than the servers themselves. Hardware failures happen, and if the services that are being provided by your servers are critical to your business, you need to mitigate against hardware failure. In many cases, a support contract, whether that's for hardware or for software, may not be enough. If a server power supply fails at 3 AM, your server is likely to be down for a time measured in hours, regardless of whatever level of support you've got. If you're running certain kinds of cloud instances, mitigation against hardware failure may be taken care of for you, but you should still check that actually works. For other cloud instances, and for virtual servers and physical servers that you own, you need to have something in place. Now, there are many ways of addressing the problem. You could set up two physical servers and they configure them such that if one fails, the other one takes over. Alternatively, at the other end of the scale, you could set up a worldwide resilient Kubernetes infrastructure running in the cloud. But the point is you need to have built-in redundancy for critical services, and you need to test that it works. I've mentioned system monitoring a couple of times, and it's true that robust monitoring of your Linux systems is essential if you're going to keep them secure and available. But just having a monitoring system is not enough. Here's a few guidelines for effective monitoring. Let's start with a couple of don'ts. So the first one is don't monitor what you won't fix. I've seen people monitor, for example, system load. And when the system load goes above some arbitrary level, they get an alert. But now what are they going to do? The fact that the system is busy isn't actually a problem in itself. Much better would be to measure the output of work. So how long does an overnight housekeeping task take? Or how long does it take to render the website's homepage? If the homepage had been rendering in, say, half a second, and it now takes 3 seconds, then that's worth investigating. It's worth understanding what's going on. The second don't is really an extension of the first. Don't ignore the alerts. So the disk is 80% full, but we've got lots of time, so I'll sort it out next week. Well, if that's how you're going to approach it, you might as well set the alert to 90%. The whole point of a monitoring system is to give you time to resolve potential issues before they impact your business. And when you get alerts, keep a note of them. Now, a ticketing system is ideal, but even a spreadsheet is better than nothing. You want to be able to check when this problem last happened, or see how many times it's happened in the last year, or how many different systems have this problem. And the aim is to have enough data to help prevent future problems. If you get a system problem that your monitoring didn't warn you about, but it could have done, then you've really got two problems. You've got the system problem itself, and you've got the ineffective monitoring. So you need to extend your monitoring so that if the same problem occurs in the future, you do get a warning. And finally, if you rely on the monitoring system to alert you to potential problems, and particularly if you're doing this 24/7, then you should have a completely independent system that monitors the monitor. Because if your main monitoring system stops working for some reason, then clearly you won't be alerted to any issues. So you need to know that the monitoring system has broken. So they were the 5 key principles to ensure that your servers remain secure and available. We started by ensuring that you're running a fully supported version of Linux, that you should also monitor all your systems and act on any alerts promptly. A configuration management system not only ensures consistency between your systems, but it also provides an audit trail of changes that are made. It's critical that security updates are installed as they become available to keep your systems protected. And finally, when you're designing your Linux infrastructure, focus on the services that need to be available rather than the servers themselves. So that was our 5 key principles that you should follow to keep your system secure and available. And now I'll hand you back to Sean.
Thanks, Keith. So that was a few of the principles that we use here at Tiger Computing to keep our client servers secure and available. As I mentioned earlier, we have a special offer that's valid for today that will help improve your Linux security and availability. That's a free Linux system health check. So one of the services we offer is a Linux system health check. And this involves one of our consultants examining a system and writing an in-depth report with findings and recommendations. The normal price for the Linux system health check is £399. But if you register for a health check today, you can have one system checked for free, including the written report. If you'd like to take advantage of this special offer, send an email to offer@tiger-computing.co.uk and we'll arrange that for you. Remember, you must mail us by 5 PM today to get the free health check. That's all from us for now. We hope you found this useful, and we'll send out an email shortly with a copy of the slides. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out on the contact details shown on the screen. Thank you very much for joining us, and we wish you a very Merry Christmas.